Berlin's Reichstag building stands in ruins after the fierce final battle for the city in 1945. After Germany's reunification, it was completely rebuilt with a modern glass dome, becoming a powerful symbol of the country's new era. An early motorized scooter called the Autoped carries a couple through the streets of New York around 1923. The vehicle was marketed for its convenience, but never truly caught on, remaining a curious footnote in urban transportation. During a 1968 presentation later called The Mother of All Demos, engineer Douglas Engelbart demonstrates the computer mouse for the first time. He also introduced the world to concepts like video conferencing and word processing decades before they became common. Flight attendants from Pacific Southwest Airlines, PSA, pose for a promotional photo in the early 1980s. The airline was famous for its brightly colored uniforms and cheerful branding, aiming to make air travel feel like a party. A young Linda Carter sits for a portrait in the early 1970s, a few years before landing her career-defining role. She would soon become a household name and a television icon, starring as Wonder Woman starting in 1975. In 1932, photographer Dr. Eric Salomon faked a broken arm to sneak a camera into the Supreme Court, where photography was forbidden. His hidden camera, concealed inside his sling, captured the only candid photos ever taken during a live session. For the 1949 film Love Happy, a young Marilyn Monroe met with comedy veteran Groucho Marx to secure a small part. Her brief walk-on role was one of her earliest appearances on the silver screen. President Gerald Ford rides through Madrid with Spanish leader Francisco Franco in May 1975. The visit was highly controversial, as Franco's authoritarian regime was nearing its end, with the dictator passing away just 6 months later. Aviation tycoon Howard Hughes tests a large-scale, remote-controlled model of his enormous H-4 Hercules flying boat. This complex setup allowed him to test flight characteristics before piloting the real aircraft for its one and only flight. A family of African-American farm workers pauses on a roadside in July 1940, having migrated from Florida. They were heading to New Jersey as part of the Great Migration, seeking better economic opportunities in the north. Soviet circus performer Olga Borisova rehearses a routine with her lion Caesar in 1977. She and her husband were famous for their unique training methods, which were based on building a close, trusting bond with their animals. Actors Bill Paxton, Liam Neeson, and Patrick Swayze share a moment behind the scenes of the 1989 film Next of Kin. The three played Appalachian brothers who traveled to Chicago to avenge their younger sibling. A U.S. soldier in Vietnam in 1968 wears a constant reminder of home, tucking photos of his sweetheart into his helmet band. This common practice for GIs brought a deeply personal touch to the standard-issue gear of the war. Just a year before their big break, the Beatles played a show to only 18 people at a club in Aldershot, England, in December 1961. A local newspaper failed to run the advertisement for the gig, resulting in the comically small audience. Future President George H.W. Bush pins second Lieutenant Barrs onto his son, George W. Bush, in 1968. The ceremony marked the younger Bush's commission into the Texas Air National Guard. Long before his late-night desk, a young Stephen Colbert flashes a smile around 1984. He was studying theater at Northwestern University and honing his comedy skills with an improv troupe. An immense crowd packs the beach at Coney Island to celebrate the 4th of July in 1946. It was the first Independence Day after the end of World War II, drawing New Yorkers to the shore in record numbers. Apollo 16 astronaut Charles Duke left this plastic-wrapped photo of his family on the lunar surface in 1972. On the back, he wrote a message to his wife and kids, leaving a deeply personal memento on another world. Italian superstar Sophia Loren kneels down to place her handprints in wet cement outside Grauman's Chinese Theater in 1958. The famous ceremony solidified her status as a major Hollywood player during the golden age of cinema. A massive wall of press photographers surrounds the Beatles during their first U.S. press conference at JFK Airport. Their arrival on February 7, 1964, officially kicked off the British invasion, that would dominate the U.S. music charts. Sybil Shepherd holds an umbrella on a sunny day, pictured here around 1976. That same year, she starred in the critically acclaimed film Taxi Driver, cementing her place as a major 70s actress. Legendary Alabama football coach Paul Bear Bryant shares a laugh with player John Mitchell. Mitchell was one of the first African-American players for the Crimson Tide, helping to break the color barrier in the early 70s. British model Jenny Clare strikes a pose next to a classic Mini Cooper in London around 1972. Her short dress and platform shoes were the height of fashion during the popular swinging London era. During a break from filming the 1959 epic Ben-Hur, actors in full Roman centurion gear gather around a Vespa. The candid moment captures a hilarious clash between the ancient world and modern Italian style on the massive movie set. A young Richard Nixon poses for a team photo with the Whittier College football team in the early 1930s. Although he wasn't a starting player, teammates remembered him for his dedication and enthusiasm for the game. Two Wendy's employees show off a tray of food while wearing the chain's iconic striped uniforms from the 1980s. The restaurant was famous for its square burgers, chili, and the massively popular "Where's the Beef" ad campaign. Ford experimented with a new steering system called Wrist Twist in its 1965 Mercury concept cars. The design, using two rings instead of a wheel, was meant to improve visibility, but was confusing for drivers and never went into production. Shortly after the disaster in April 1912, a well-dressed Titanic survivor gives her autograph to a man in the street. The public was fascinated by the stories of those who made it out alive, turning many of them into reluctant celebrities. Cesar Romero, in full Joker makeup, shares a laugh with guests on the set of the 1960s Batman TV show. He famously refused to shave his signature mustache for the role, forcing the makeup department to simply paint over it. Rows of female workers assembled the plexiglass nose cones for A-20 Havoc bombers at a Douglas aircraft plant. These Rosie the Riveters were a crucial part of the American war effort during World War II, taking on factory jobs while men were serving overseas. A rocket known as Bumper 8 lifts off from Cape Canaveral in July 1950, marking the first launch from the famous site. It was a two-stage vehicle with an American WS Corporal rocket mounted on the nose of a captured German V-2. The Statue of Liberty towers over Parisian rooftops around 1886, fully assembled but not yet shipped to America. French craftsmen built the copper statue in sections, which were then dismantled into 350 pieces for the transatlantic journey. Two women walk through a Moroccan street in 1965, dressed in traditional jalabas and face veils. Their modern handbags offer a small glimpse of Western influence, blending with the local culture of the time. A gas station owner in Toronto makes his political stance clear during the early 1980s. He refused to sell gas to drivers of Russian-made Lada cars to protest the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. Italian actress Monica Bellucci poses for a photo in 1991, early in her career when she was primarily known as a fashion model. The rural setting provides a striking contrast to the high-fashion world she would soon dominate on screen. For the 1980 movie Raise the Titanic, the production team built this massive 55-foot-long model of the ship. Weighing 10 tons, the scale replica was used for the film's dramatic scenes of the ship being brought to the surface. Before digital printing, the pages of every comic book were sorted and assembled by hand on lines like this one. This all-female workforce was the unacknowledged backbone of the comic industry, collating millions of pages with remarkable speed. President Ronald Reagan and Emperor Hirohito stand together during a formal state visit to Tokyo in the 1980s. The meeting between the two former wartime adversaries symbolized the strong political and economic alliance between the U.S. and Japan. America's first group of astronauts, known as the Mercury 7, pose for a group portrait in their silver spacesuits in 1959. These military test pilots were selected from a pool of over 500 candidates to become the nation's pioneers in space. A female worker installs components on the engine of a B-25 bomber at a plant in Inglewood, California, in October 1942. This striking Kodachrome photo captures one of the many Rosie the Riveters who were essential to America's industrial might during the war. A quality control worker at EMI's pressing plant inspects a vinyl copy of the Beatles' album Rubber Soul in 1965. Each record was visually checked for imperfections before being packaged into one of the thousands of album covers seen stacked nearby. Actress Christina Applegate poses for a promotional photo as her famous character, Kelly Bundy. The hit sitcom Married with Children ran from 1987 to 1997, making the character a pop culture staple of the era. Two men braved the cold on a frozen Michigan lake in 1955, using their Chrysler sedan as a makeshift ice shanty. They've cut holes in the ice right next to the car doors, allowing them to fish from the relative comfort of the front seat. A Soviet Army cook shares some food with a polar bear mother and her cub in the Arctic region around 1950. Such encounters were apparently not uncommon for military personnel stationed in the remote, icy north. An enormous billboard of Benito Mussolini with a camera dominates this rally in fascist Italy around 1937. The slogan below him declares, "Cinematography is the strongest weapon," highlighting the regime's belief in the power of film for propaganda. In 1974, Mary Wallace smiles from the driver's seat as she becomes the first female bus operator for the Chicago Transit Authority. She broke new ground with her hiring and went on to have a successful 33-year career with the CTA before retiring. John Schrank stands calmly under arrest after his failed attempt to assassinate former President Theodore Roosevelt in Milwaukee in 1912. Despite being shot in the chest, Roosevelt insisted on delivering his 90-minute speech before seeking medical attention. Author Rudyard Kipling poses in his study around 1895, surrounded by the books that fueled his imagination. The celebrated writer, famous for works like The Jungle Book, would go on to win the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1907. Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, and Mark Hamill goof around during a promotional photo shoot for The Empire Strikes Back in 1980. This lighthearted moment shows the off-screen chemistry of the trio, a stark contrast to the film's dramatic storyline. While a soldier salutes, Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau casually carries his young son, Justin, in Ottawa in 1973. The candid photo captures a unique moment in political history, as the child tucked under his father's arm would become Prime Minister himself 42 years later.